No one make noise. I'd like to sit here and knit my short rows. Who's having flashbacks? Do I look like a friendly little gingerbread man?
I'm Nora, and this is also known as Nora Knits.
Hello there, I'm Nora, and you're watching, also known as Nora Knits. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with me for another podcast episode today. I have done so much knitting in the past few days. I have a finished object to share with you, a new cast on, a couple of whips that have made some progress, and I even have some acquisitions, which we will talk about at the very end. Before I get into all of that, I wanted to mention that I am running my very first knit along, and with that, I've been trying to navigate exactly just how I'm doing that. I'm new here. Hello. And so the knit along is called Stash Bust Spring. You can use the hashtag Stash Bust Spring on Instagram and make sure that you tag me at aka Nora Knits so that I can see what you are working on. The rules are very simple and really it's all up to your own discretion. The entire purpose, the whole point of this knit along is really just to be mindful of what you have in stash and take a moment to work on a project using some stash yarn. The ideal goal is that you're not going to purchase any new yarn during the knit along, which by the way runs until June 21st. However, that being said, I know some people said I'd love to participate, but I'm going to a yarn festival in a couple of weeks, and if you're going to a yarn festival, like please go buy some yarn, have some fun. But I think the idea is to, in the meantime, knit on some stash yarn and maybe other than that festival, try not to buy any new yarn. However, the exceptions are, of course, you can always thrift yarn because it would be rude to say you cannot. And I think it's fair to say that if you need yarn in order to supplement the yarn in your stash, in order to complete a project, then I say it's fair to go ahead and purchase that yarn with the intent of getting the majority of it out of your stash. So, like I said, it's up to your own discretion. Be mindful of what you have in your stash. Let's try to get some things out of there. And at the end of the season, we can all look back at what we used and didn't use and maybe just make some more decisions on how we can do some spring cleaning of the stash after all is said and done. So that is the knit along. Now till June 21st, you don't need to have a finished object. You can, of course, be working on a project that has already been in progress with some stash yarn. And really, just the point is use up some stash, be mindful of your stash, try not to indulge in overconsumption. But if you're going to the yarn festival, have fun. If you're thrifting, buy the yarn. And if you need some to get the project done, go ahead and make your purchase. So that's what we have going on. At the end of the knit along, I'm working on putting together some prizes. And so the last video that I post on YouTube before the end of the knit along, I will make it very clear on how you can participate through YouTube. In the meantime, feel free to just hashtag StashBustSpring in the comments and let us know what you're working on with your stash. And at the very end, we will have an option to win some prizes through YouTube, to win some prizes through Instagram. Just know that it's easiest for me to sort of host this whole thing over on Instagram and stay in touch with all of it. But by all means, if you don't have Instagram, you may participate. Please do. And just keep us posted in the comments. And then at the very end, you'll see how you can enter to win one of the prizes in the end. So those are the sort of rules and everything. I hope you guys are excited. I know a lot of you have been. You've already been tagging on Instagram. And I just really love that we're all doing this together. I think it's a nice little encouragement to use that stash. So hashtag StashBustSpring. I won't say anything more about it today. And so with that out of the way, I think we should go ahead and dive on in. Okay, so let's start with the finished object, which is no longer with me. So the photos or the cutaways that I have here are going to have to suffice because I am talking about the Folklore cardigan by Lion Brand that I knit up for my cousin, Miss Emma, and I was able to gift it to her on Easter Sunday this past weekend. And boy, was it a success. I'm going to start from the beginning a little bit, but I am going to kind of gloss over this one because one of the next videos that you're going to see from me is actually going to be my first sort of project vlog that I've been making in tandem with this project since I was doing just so many new things with this one. So be on the lookout for that for all of the details, but just a quick overview. This was a cardigan I had knit up for my cousin. However, I was sort of gifting it vicariously through her Mimi, my aunt. And so my aunt had purchased the kit from Mary Maxim, and I knit up the project for Miss Emma. The yarn that was part of the kit was the Lion Brand Wool Ease, which is a wool and acrylic blend. And it was the colorway Fisherman within the black accents. And I was knitting this in the size small. However, I knit it at a smaller gauge and reduced some stitches in order to make the whole project fit my cousin as well as it can, since this is a Taylor Swift cardigan and she's in her Swiftie phase right now. So I wanted to make sure it would fit her now, and I definitely let her know if she grows out of it in the next couple of years and still really wants one, I'd be happy to make her another. I just wanted her to be able to wear it now as comfortably and as well-fitting as possible, and she absolutely loved it. Her mom, my cousin, actually texted me Easter night and said she hasn't taken it off. She's obsessed with it, and she was so excited just to wear it to school and all of that. So Emma, if you're watching, I'm so glad that you love your cardigan. Remember what I said. Please use it. Please wear it. Don't be too precious with it. Enjoy it. We can always make you a new one. So it was a success. The last time we spoke, had been pulling all of my stitches off of their provisional cast on. That was a modification I chose to do so that I could work this sweater bottom up in the pieces as it was intended, but then seam everything together and come back and knit the ribbings and finishes button band the other way and finish everything off with an Italian bind off. And if I'm knitting this sweater again, I would do it the same way the next time. I would just use the provisional cast on methods that you all suggested in last week's video, because I went with a crochet provisional cast on and it just made the actual picking those stitches back up a little bit fussier. However, most people suggested using the provisional cast on technique that involves casting your stitches onto some try-it-on tubing so that when it's time to go back to those stitches, you could just slide them off the tubing and get going with the knitting. That's how I would do it the next time. And like I said, I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about that whole process in the project vlog. So just stay tuned for that. But I wanted to let you know it was a success. It worked out. I did wind up blocking it again. I think after the last time we spoke, I gave it another full soak because I had blocked all of the pieces, seamed them together when they were dry, and then noticed that, first of all, I just didn't have enough pins to really stretch out all of those cables properly in their blocking in pieces. And plus, after you seam things together, it just felt like it needed another block. So I did soak block it again, let it dry for a couple of nights, and then I still went in with a steamer. And I don't do anything fancy. I would definitely recommend trying this on a swatch on your blocking mats if you're going to do this. But I've always had success with just leaving my project out on the blocking mats pinned out, and my iron has a steam function. So then just hovering over the project with the steamer, especially on acrylic yarns. This really helps to just set things in place. And if you've tested it on a swatch, sometimes you can even gently and with a cloth underneath it, run the iron just gently, no pressing, just a quick little heat kiss to the fabric to really settle all of those stitches. I think it makes the biggest difference. This fabric went through 2 full wet soak blocks. And then the steam block was the only thing that really held everything out in place. So 100% recommend. Try it out on your swatch. Try it out on your blocking mats. You might want to shift over to an ironing board. I just have always been able to do it on the blocking mats. Haven't had an issue. So, and that makes it easy because I can have the fabric nice and pinned out while I'm just giving it that nice steam, and then even putting it on a hanger and one more steam over. I love to steam something. It gives the most professional finish. And yeah, if you feel like you've blocked your project and you still aren't getting the full potential out of the fabric, highly recommend jumping in with a steamer. And I would say specifically a steam iron versus a vertical steamer, just because if you can lay it flat and pin and steam, chef's kiss, so good. So everything went really well. I'm so happy with it. I was able to snag a few photos Easter morning. I was totally down to the wire with this one and wrapped up all of the weaving in ends and sewing on buttons and all of that stuff the night before. So Saturday night when I was giving this to Emma for Easter Sunday. In total, the project was a whip for 47 days. And I just want to reiterate that if you're planning to knit this cardigan or just any full cabled garment in general, remember it's going to take some time. I was knitting this in the smallest size I've ever knit anything, and it still took longer than some of my own full-sized garments. So just keep that in mind. But overall, so happy with the result. I have my spreadsheet. It's the Folklore cardigan pattern. I'm going to reference the iPad here, so I'll just hold it up so you can see I'm reading. It's the Folklore cardigan pattern by Lion Brand. That is a free pattern that you can download from the Lion Brand website. I think you just have to put in your email. However, the kit came from a company called Mary Maxim, and that was what my aunt had purchased and then gifted to me. So technically the whole pattern and the yarn, they all came in the kit, and that was gifted. The yarn that came inside was the Lion Brand Wool Ease, and it came with enough yarn to make the full small/medium cardigan. I will say that when I was just looking for some information on this kit to put in my spreadsheet, I did see in the frequently asked questions that some people said that their kit did not come with quite enough yarn. So I would just keep that in mind. I also think that you could probably get the yarn at a more affordable price if you shop with a little bit of savviness over on your Joann's or Michael's. Use your coupons. And I think with doing that versus the kit, you can actually get a better price unless you find the kit on sale. So I'm just going to say the kit on its own with the pattern and everything, it's about $50. So it came with 6 balls of the Wool Ease yarn. If you break that down, it means that each ball of yarn costs about $8. And I tapped into 5 of the balls, which means that the total I could have spent on yarn if I was buying them at $8 a ball would have been $40. The only additional expenses that I had were the buttons, which I mentioned last week. I picked up at Michael's. They were $1.20 for a pack of 3 buttons, and I was going to put 4 on because I feel like it would have been more my style. However, we're gifting this to a Swiftie. We're making her the exact replica cardigan, which has 3 buttons. So I only had that $1.20 for the additional expenses, meaning that the kit plus the buttons came to about $51.20. However, if I was purchasing the actual balls of yarn that I just tapped into at $8 a skein, it was a bit more of a $41.20 total. However, like I said, my aunt gifted me the whole kit to gift to Miss Emma. So I spent $120. And like I said, it was on the needles for 47 days. So that is the very long, short version of the Folklore cardigan. And if you are interested in knitting this cardigan, if you want to know more about my process and all of the modifications that I made, then I would definitely just say keep an eye out for the project vlog, which I'm hoping to have out in the next week, but no promises. So that's the Folklore. We can now move on. And at this point, I like to talk about the project that's been on my needles the longest. So today, that is the Sand Cardigan by Maria Isaeva of Ulin Knitwear. And today, it has officially been on the needles for 46 days. I currently have this project living in a bag that was gifted to me from my friend Shayla over at Black Pearl Magic. And I have to say, in the past, I would have laughed and said, project bags are totally useless. You don't need them. However, in the past couple of weeks, having more whips than I've ever had before going all at once, I have found project bags to be an absolute game changer. So this has just totally come in handy. And this is the largest of the project bags that I have. And this is getting bigger. So it's made its way into here. So here we have it. This is my Folklore chase, my sand cardigan, which I'm knitting in Nora Madara in the colorway 01 Sake. And I think I'll just reiterate that I have blocked this project and then continued knitting on it. So if you're seeing differences in like the body fabric versus say the sleeve fabric, that's why some of this has been blocked. Others haven't. However, since the last time we spoke, I have finished up knitting the first of 2 sets of increase rates on the sleeves. I had completed on one of the sleeves, and since we spoke, managed to complete the other. I also managed to pop in a progress keeper after we spoke last, which is right here on top of my finger there. And so I've made a few inches of progress on this. Not very much, but that was also, I had a good bit of the sleeve left to do still. So it looks like in the past week, I've managed to do a little more than 3 inches on the back and forth knitting of the body of this. I think things are going to be kind of uneventful on here for the immediate future. Only because this is a duster length cardigan, so it's a lot of knitting back and forth. And the construction of this one is a little bit funny in that in the pattern, you are to knit the sleeves prior to the body, but I'm doing just a little bit of back and forth. Honestly, to keep things exciting, but also to make sure that I'm knitting things to the appropriate length. I feel like it's helpful to do a little of the body and then go back to the sleeves. So the sleeves are kind of halfway to where they need to be. We're going to knit on the body for a little bit, then see how that's going to affect the length of the sleeves. So I'll be going back and forth. The next notable part of the pattern is the pockets that are included. So I'm not sure how long it'll take for us to get there, but that's going to be sort of the next pivotal point. Until then, I'm just working on this slow and steady. I've decided that originally I actually thought I was going to try and knit this for my birthday. That was out the window pretty quickly. Then I thought it would be nice to have for Easter. That wasn't happening. So since then, I've reasoned with myself and I've decided that I want to place 0 deadline on this. I want to knit on this until it is perfect, until it is exactly what I want it to be, until I'm satisfied with the result, rather than stressing to get a finished product done anytime sooner. I don't need it right now. It's okay. I'd rather enjoy the time working on it than stress over a deadline. So for now, I think this is going to be a pretty uneventful update week by week. I have been utilizing this as my soccer watching knitting because I can do the back and forth without looking. And so that's what it's doing right now. I am knitting this on US 7 4.5 millimeter needles, and I have this on one of those Knit Picks mindful cords that swivel, which I'm still in need of. Just next time I see those in a yarn shop, I'm going to pick up a bunch more because I'm favoring them over all of my other cables. I also have tried to sort of get the sleeves out of the way because that was causing me issues in the back and forth flipping this. The sleeves, because you knit them first, do just get out of the sort of get in your way. And so I actually have them kind of like tied together to the body so that as I'm flipping, they're kind of staying in place a little bit better. But yeah, we're going to just keep going on this one. Not much to say about it for now. It's looking like nothing at the moment. So that's the update currently on the sand cardigan, and we shall see what it's doing next week. Next up in the way of whips, I've got my Stripeless Farnham tee by the Knit Purl Girl, and it has been on my needles for 23 days. However, that does include a good week at least that I didn't touch it one bit. But of course, that's how long it has been a whip, so that's how we're going to consider it. And I say stripeless because this pattern is written to have stripes. I just really liked the look and the silhouette of the tee itself, so I've been knitting it without stripes. And this is part of my Stash Bust Spring Knit Along. Here we go. Oh, and again, here, I'll show you. This is actually a cosmetic bag that a friend of mine had gifted to me, but it is the perfect size project bag for something like this. And inside I have my project. Let's first skip to the yarn though. Stash Bust Spring, I was getting creative with some of the yarn I had in stash that just wasn't speaking to me, but I thought of different ways I could maybe use it in order to get it out of stash. So one of those things was the Lion brand True Boo. This is in the colorway khaki. It is 100% rayon from bamboo, and I had 3 balls of this in stash, as well as 4 balls of Universal Yarns Universe 10th anniversary celebration yarn in the colorway bronze, which, by the way, I did mix that up in a previous video and I said it was the colorway tin. It's the colorway bronze. But that is a linen and cotton sparkle tinsel yarn. That's sort of a lace weight, and I decided to hold those two together. So I've been working the True Boo straight from the ball, but then the Universe yarn, there's always hair on my face. That in its lace weight tends to be a little bit more fussy and finicky off of the sort of the cardboard roll that it comes on. So I've chose to wind it into cakes as I work on it, but then I needed a way to sort of keep it contained. And I realized that we have one of these, the Talenti Gelato canisters was kicking around, and it was the perfect size to stick my caked up yarn into. And so that has been perfect to keep this from getting crushed and squished and tangled, because it can. And so those have just been living inside of my little cosmetic bag here. And then I have been chugging along on my tee. I'm knitting this on also US 7 4.5 millimeter needles, which you may have noticed when I was holding up this sand cardigan that I'm actually using my shorty needles to knit that. They're not like the shortest ones, but they're sort of like a mid-size needle, because I only have a set of interchangeable needles, and then I have a set of those shorties. So that's my solution. I was tinkering back and forth with the idea of just picking up another set of the full-size US 7 needles because I think that they are my most used, but I'm really trying to not have so many whips on the needles at the same time. So I think in the future, I'm going to try and plan around that. If I see this becoming an issue again, then I'll just pick up another set. But in the meantime, that's what I'm thinking. So, gosh, this is so exciting. Here is the tea at the moment. I have to say, this is some hefty, drapey fabric. I mean, it really has some weight to it. I'm hoping that when it's on, that's going to feel like a good thing. But at the moment, I'm just like, geez, this is so heavy. I had let this hang out on the needles for some time. After I had knit, you start with the back, cast on across the back, and you work short rows right away, and then you knit down to the point of the underarm connection. And at that point, you are actually casting on at the shoulders and more short rows until you are ready to connect those two in the front. And then knit down again to the point of the underarm connection, which I have now, since I've connected under the arm, it looks like I've gotten maybe about 3 inches done under the arms there. So I had it hanging out waiting to pick up the front pieces and then do those short rows because that was just too much for my brain to handle last week. So I took the afternoon the other day to just go ahead and get that done. And I'm going to just come back to this point I've made before with the Farnham tee. Did I say by the Knit Pearl Girl? It's a beautiful pattern. It is thorough. She's a thorough pattern. It's a very, very thorough pattern, which is amazing. If you're knitting this as intended with the stripes, it's going to make sure that your stripes are perfect. And that's part of the whole thing with the short rows. I mean, the way that she's figured all of that out for you is so clever. And with the stripes, it's going to be so beautiful. If you're knitting this without the stripes, you're kind of like, okay, where's the part where we just move on? But again, I knew that going into it. So I come back to, if you want to knit this with the stripes, you're going to have a great time with it. For reference, I might paint the picture of just how thorough the pattern is. Everything that I've done so far, so I still have to pick up the collar, knit the sleeves, knit the hem, all of that. As it is, I am on page 19 of the instructions of the pattern. So very thorough. If you're wanting to knit a striped tee, I couldn't recommend this more. If you're looking for a mindless basic tee, I might just find something that's actually meant to be mindless and basic. But I'm happy to have the option because I love a striped tee. So when I get to that point, it's going to be great to have that pattern already in my library. So anyway, at this point, I'm knitting this in the round. Things aren't super exciting. The short rows were pretty easy, just took a little brain power. And I'm the kind of person when I'm doing stuff like that, something like short rows, and I'm like, I want to reserve an afternoon to just sit down and I want to do that from point A to point B. I want to get it done. I don't want to start short rows and come back to them later. I want it to be done in that sitting right then and there. No one make noise. I'd like to sit here and knit my short rows. So that's what I had done. I have at this point worked through a full ball of each the True Boo and the Sparkle yarn, and I am now in my second ball of each of those. I guess we could jump a little bit forward to some of those acquisitions. I did pick up some more True Boo because I know that I'm going to need at least another ball of that just to match the amount of the Sparkle yarn that I have. When I went to go look for it in the colorway, I saw that the best place for me to buy it was going to be on Amazon. And basically, I'm not sure if I'm going to need a single ball so that I have enough of the Sparkle and the True Boo together, Or am I going to need an additional 2 balls so that I can get everything the way that I want it as far as the length of the sleeves, the length of the body, with as all the sparkle yarn that I have that I can't really easily get my hands on another ball of? I might wind up doing the finishes in just the True Boo, in which case I'm gonna need 2 additional balls of the True Boo, which if I were to buy those 2 separately, it costs the same as buying a 3-pack of the yarn on Amazon. So I went ahead and picked up the 3-pack, but it's hanging out and I haven't touched it yet because if I get to the end of my second ball and then see where I'm at, I might actually not even need that much. I just don't know yet. So I'm playing it by ear a little bit. At this point, I would try it on, but I really don't think that there's even much to try on because it's not even at a point of covering me decently. So we will definitely try it on next week. The only other thing that I really wanted to mention about it was that I was really excited to finally have a project that was just stockinette in the round because it has been a while since I've had that. And unfortunately, the nature of this yarn, it is so slippery. And then the 2 strands together, I really can't knit this without looking at it. I have to make sure that I'm picking up, that I'm not splitting the True Boo. That's pretty easy to do. That I'm not just picking up the True Boo and not the sparkle, but also it's just so slippery and my hands have been getting a little sore working on it. So I'm just trying not to work on this one too much. Only when I'm in the mood to do something a little bit more involved than the back and forth of the sand cardigan, but it's not exactly scratching the itch of just some stockinette in the round. However, I'm still just enjoying the fabric that I'm getting. I think that this is going to make for such a fun tee that I could dress up or dress down. I think that the color of the sparkle and the khaki works out really nice, whereas I felt like the khaki on its own kind of washed me out a little bit. So I think that the sparkle and the sort of mauvey and gray and black that are built into that really help to just add some depth and dimension to the khaki in a way that's just really nice. So yeah, so excited about this one. So we'll see how far we get with that by next week. At some point, I might just get bored, or typically what I tend to do is sort of knit the body until I run out of yarn. And then when it comes time to grabbing a new ball of yarn, that's when I'll just go in and start casting on the sleeves and stuff. So we might wind up doing that. It's just going to be a matter of what I'm in the mood for. So this is the Farnham tee on the needles for 23 days today. All right, now we finally have a new cast on, a new whip. This has been a long time coming, a while ago. I mean, it was last year. Last year, Unit Toronto had reached out and offered to send me a kit. They wanted to send me some yarn to participate in one of their knit-alongs, and there were some issues with getting the colors and stock and all this stuff, but finally we were able to connect and get the kit. So thank you to Unit Toronto and Claudia for sending me this yarn. It came in this sweet drawstring bag, and I am participating in their Azucena pullover and knit along, which is one of Claudia's most recent designs, and it is my very first Colorwork sweater. So excited. Quickly, let me show you the yarns that we are working with here. This is the color palette that I have going. This is a sweater that is meant to be knit up with your wool and mohair. And so I am using Knitting for Olive, which is another first. I've been so eager to try the Knitting for Olive yarn. So I'm very happy to be doing that in this setting. And the main color for my sweater is the brown nougat. And again, this is their merino and soft silk mohair. And then the contrast color that I am working with is also the merino and soft silk mohair in the colorway cream. And I cast this project on 2 days ago now, and I'm having fun. So I hope you're ready to see where we're at. This is what I mean when I say that project bags have just become helpful in the current state we have going on. So this is another one that my friend Shayla from Black Pearl Magic had gifted me. And inside, I'm a little tangled. I will say Colorwork for the first time using the mohair and the wool and 2 colors. So there's 4 balls of yarn going. But here we go. She's a little tangled. Here it is. Oh my gosh, this is like a little pillow. I think I'm gonna look like the cutest little gingerbread man, aren't I? Okay, so I'm trying to unfurl this, but I think it might be best if we just throw this on some try-it-on tubing because I actually have yet to really properly try it on. This also means it's time for a segment we have not done in a good while. So let's start a little try it on tubing and chat. While I am moving this over to the needles, I figured I will tell you a little bit about this sweater. First of all, come after me, knitting police, because I did not gauge swatch. I have to say that this project showed up at the perfect time, the yarn, because I had just finished Emma's cardigan and I was just really eager to work on something for myself and try something new. And I felt like I've been staring at the same projects for so long. I've been really excited about trying my first Colorwork sweater. So this seemed like the perfect way to do that based on everything that I've heard about Colorwork, where people say that you want to, 2 colors as the easiest. And I'm doing stranded colorwork. That's new to me. To prepare for it, I think a few months back, I watched a few videos on like tips for knitting colorwork, but to be honest, I just sort of cast on. I was very excited about it. I looked again at the sizing, and typically I'm knitting something like an extra large or a double XL when it comes to just people's patterns. I'd never knit one of Claudia's designs before. And after looking again at the bust circumference and other people's project photos and the intended positive ease and all of this, and then really what it was more so was I sat down and thought about like, how am I going to wear this sweater? Because it's going to be a little bit different from anything else that I have in my wardrobe. It's actually, I'm kind of comparing it to my ranunculus, which by the way, I'm wearing my ranunculus by Midori Hirose. I knit this up in Malabrigo Sussurro in the colorway Frank Ochre. And I knit this so that it is like a glorified long sleeve shirt. And I sort of wanted to knit this Azucena sweater in the same way. I always do this. I just drop my stitches. One moment. Didn't I do this while I was literally doing my ranunculus? Hey. Okay. Every time. So basically, my point being that I wanted something that was not going to be so oversized, because the style of this sweater, I just picture wearing a little bit more like dressy, but dressy is not even really the word. I don't know. I just really liked the idea of it sort of fitting the way my ranunculus does, especially considering it's a circular yoke and all of that. I don't know, just the way that I was picturing it more with like skirts and stuff. I didn't want it to be so oversized. So I decided to cast this on in the size large. Again, I didn't do a gauge swatch. I just really wanted to start knitting it. And I figured it was risky to cast on without doing a gauge swatch, but I also figured, what am I going to do in the gauge swatch? I'm going to swatch the Colorwork, and worst case, I'm going to undo that. You know, if I was going to do a gauge swatch, I was going to be gauge swatching with the Colorwork to test how that goes. And so really, what was the difference between just diving into the pattern and starting the Colorwork and then checking my gauge? And that way, if it works out, then I just keep going. And then if not, that was the gauge swatch, it wasn't that different to me. So I just went ahead and cast on. And the only thing so far as I can tell, I think I've heard so many people talk about how they knit their Colorwork way too tight. And I was terrified of doing that. So I think mine might be a touch loose, but I'm running with it. I think it's going to be okay, especially because the design is intended to have embroidery and beading applied afterwards. And I'm waiting to see when I'm done if I'm going to do that or not. I haven't totally decided just yet. I also wanted to talk about why I chose the colors that I did. First of all, the sort of brown color is a pretty spot on match for my little Miss OC, which I liked the idea of. But also it's a sort of, floral color work. And all the colors that I was then leaning towards were sort of pinks and all this. And my style, I try to mix the sort of hard and soft or the feminine and masculine so that I never have too girly a thing. Sometimes I'm all about that, but generally speaking, if I were to have a very girly garment, I'd probably pair it with something like a leather jacket to sort of roughen it up a little. So I liked the idea of knitting this in a little bit more of just a neutral, less feminine color. So that was why I went with the brown. And I also wanted to say, so far working with the yarn, I caked up the cream colorway, not the mohair. The mohair works straight from the ball, but I didn't cake up the brown nougat colorway because I've heard of people just saying that they work straight from the ball. So I figured I would sort of experiment and see what I like better. And I have to say, the next one I will be 100% caking up. Knitting it from the ball has been a nightmare. It's so tangled up. I keep having to pull. It's really tight in there. So that's been a little bit frustrating. I'm definitely going to cake it up the next time. But with that, we are off of the needles. Let's tie that off and we can finish our try it on tubing and chat. All right, let's get this all fanned out. That super satisfying circular yoke shot I'll have to get. And before I try it on, I'm also going to just say I looked at other people's project photos and I had this issue and I noticed I was not the only one in the increases in the yoke. I have a few spots where I just got a little hole and I'm not the only one that happened to. It doesn't bother me immensely. I'm not even sure why that happened or how to remedy it, but that's just something to point out. Otherwise, I adore the way that it looks and I'm curious to see how it's going to look on. How sweet is that? And I will get up close and show you my floats too, which again, I think are a little bit loose. Although now seeing them totally fanned out, maybe they're just right. I was so careful and I've been catching floats too. So it's a one big experiment, but I'm really excited about it. And I have to say, especially after just holding up the Farnham tee, this literally weighs nothing. If I toss this in the air and let it fall, it will quite literally drop like a feather. So I will close up and then I'll try this on. While you're looking at the close-up, I will tell you a little bit about the construction. I have to say it was so nice for the first time in a long time to have knit something where you just cast on the ribbing and work your way down. It's just nice sometimes to hit the ground running like that. So that was a relief. And then you go into your contrast color with the sort of scallopy edge. First, you do some short rows on the back of the neck. And then, honestly, my favorite part of the whole pattern is all of the little scallop edge details. Then you start with these little tiny flowers. You're following a chart. The chart is very clear and simple. And then you work your way down into another set of those same tiny flowers. And then the flowers get bigger and bigger as you go. If I didn't mention already, like I said, this is a knit along through Unit Toronto. And I will put the date of the end of the knit along on the screen here so that you can see. But I'm just excited to be knitting on this guy. I'm just gonna sit because it is just a who's having flashbacks? Is that yarn or my hair? Oh my goodness. Okay. I mean, excuse me? Are we excited? Do I look like a friendly little gingerbread man? I feel like a friendly little gingerbread man, and the fabric is so soft and mohairy. I don't do a ton of knitting with mohair. In fact, this is my second project knitting with mohair, and 2024 trend said no mohair, but I wanted to try it so badly. And I do think that in this context, it just gives this sweater the nicest, I don't know, it's just so light and fluffy and frothy. And I think it really calls for that. I have to say, I'm so proud of this scallop detail. And I just am loving this. And I think right now, obviously, I will see at the end of the yoke. Right now, though, I feel like I made the right call with the size large because this is not blocked. So we can even anticipate it kind of coming down a little bit further. So I do feel like the extra large might have been a little bit too big for the style of this sweater. But right now, I am in love with it. I even think I'm kind of looking past you at the monitor there because when I was holding the cream up in the ball, it's such this beautiful, true sort of milky white. But then once it's knit, it's a little more sheer. And then I think it's just the way it plays with the brown that it reads the tiniest bit sort of green gray. And I wasn't sure how that would look overall, but I think it looks great. I think it's absolutely fine. And I'm loving it. And yes, this is 2 days of work. I just was really excited to do it. I was really excited to cast on. And it's been rainy here in Connecticut. And I just sat down on my couch, honestly, the past couple days like a little potato. And I haven't budged. I've been knitting on this, enjoying myself thoroughly. So oh my, I'm loving it. I'm really proud of my floats and everything. And I think it looks so cute. It's a great little like bib right now. Wow. All right. This is the Azucena by Claudia Quintanilla. And I'm so excited. I'm knitting with Knitting for Olive. I feel very fancy. So one more time, thank you to them for gifting this kit, this yarn, the pattern, everything. And I also have a discount code for you for the pattern. If you want to join the knit along, you can make a project on Ravelry and send a screenshot of that to Unit Toronto for a very special discount. And if you've never knit Colorwork, neither have I. This is my first time. And so far, I feel like it's going, I mean, you tell me, how's it going? I think it's going great. I'm an English style knitter. I've been dropping the yarn in between. The tips that I've heard that I've taken with me are to, as I'm knitting, really stretch out my right hand needle while I am carrying those floats over and then catching the floats. I searched that on YouTube, and the first video I watched was the one that I followed, and I've been finding that to be pretty simple too. So I don't have any floats going further than 5 stitches. And yeah, I'm so excited. I'm hoping to maybe get the next row of flowers done on this today. I will say this circular yoke really knit up so fast at first. And then in this last sort of pass of the bigger flowers, I was like, oh God, it's going so slow now because you are increasing as you go. Just like a raglan where suddenly you have all of your stitches on the needles and you're like, could we split for sleeves now? But I'm very excited. I think it's exactly what I want it to be right now. Oh, I love it. And what a relief. It's so stretchy. That was so easy to get over my head. So yay. I think before I put that back on the needles, I'll try and get one of those cool shots of the circular yoke. Actually, this is a great shot where you could see at the bottom there is my beginning of round and therefore the back and therefore the German short rows. Love it. Okay, I know I had a lot to update you guys on today, but I know I've also been talking for quite a while and I have not yet mentioned the acquisitions. I mean, okay, so there was the True Boo yarn that was supplemental to my Farnham tee, that yarn that was gifted generously from Unit Toronto. So that's something. That's not nothing. I have mohair in my eye. But if you've been here before, you know that one of my favorite ways to buy yarn is by thrifting it. You might also know that on my birthday, I went to 8, maybe 10 over the whole weekend, different thrift stores looking for yarn and came home completely empty-handed. Said no to a few finds because they just weren't enough for me to actually make something out of, or the color wasn't totally my style. But the other day I was passing by Goodwill and I stopped in there and they had one of those giant bags of yarn. And I had seen another one of these giant bags of yarn at another Goodwill on my birthday, but it was $20 and it was mostly acrylic or yarn that I just wasn't going to use or just didn't need. And then there was a sweater's quantity of yarn in there, but it was not my color. And the whole thing was $20. And I felt like for thrifted yarn, I just didn't need that. But there was this giant bag of yarn at Goodwill the other day for $7. And what I'm about to show you is just the yarn that I actually kept from it. Because when Goodwill does this, which I think is so infuriating, they just shove all of the yarn that they have into a giant bag and sell that whole bag. There's always yarn in there that I just don't need, I don't want, I'm not going to use. So I've taken what I enjoyed, plan to use, hope to use, and then just donate the rest back because I don't need it. So what I'm showing you is literally what I'm keeping. There was still a lot more in there that I just don't need taking up space in my stash. So let's go through this real quick. The first thing that I saw inside the bag that made me really excited, because again, the whole bag was $7, was this brand new skein of hand-dyed sock yarn. The brand is Savvy Skeins. I did try to look up some of these things just to give you an idea, but this is Sensible Sock, their colorway Brush Fire. It is available right now. And brand new, it's $32. So already the bag paid for itself, but it's a really beautiful mix of, honestly, it's like my home decor colors. I don't wear a lot of blue or anything, but we have a blue couch and it's got these olives and gold, yellow, orange. There's some violets and even some pinks and stuff in there. It's a really beautiful colorway. So this was inside of there. Originally, it's $32. There was also this miscellaneous cone of yarn that has no label, has no info, but it's really soft and has a bit of a halo to it. If I had to guess, this is probably wool mohair, something like that. It sort of has that single ply that's then strangled by a skinny, cobwebby sort of bit of thread that kind of gives it that squiggliness. I'll weigh it. Keep in mind I'm weighing this with the cone still on it. But with the cone, this is 335 grams of yarn. I would call this a fingering weight, most definitely, if not lace, but it's really beautiful. I don't know what I'm going to use it for yet. As always, if you have any ideas, let me know in the comments. So great part of that find. Another sort of hefty thing that was inside of that bag was this t-shirt yarn in the very exciting color of 2024 trends, which is this sort of lemony, sorbet, buttery yellow. And it's just this t-shirt yarn I've never worked with before, but it was inside of there. So I feel like this would be great for an accessory or a home decor thing. There's about 675 grams of this here. So if you have ideas, again, let me know. When I was looking up how much something like this would cost, it looks like you could pay like $10 to $20 for a cone of t-shirt yarn. So pretty good find. I have since then gone through the bag, like I said, and I have tried to sort of consolidate these things into smaller bags. And so this is one of them, in which you can see the most notable thing in here I will take out. I just wanted to kind of try and contain things. But there was this incredibly construction-y, pumpkin-y orange color yarn, fat sheep yarn, American grown, 50% mohair, 50% lamb's wool.
Hand-dyed, bulky weight, 110 yards, 4.5 ounces, US 10 to 11 meal, 2.5 to 3 stitches per inch, hand wash cool, flat dry.
By Farmhouse Yarns in, I'm assuming, the colorway Tiger Lily. When I looked this up, looks like you're talking about $20 a skein, brand new. And I have 3.5 skeins in this colorway. So if you have ideas, again, let me know. There was also what appears to maybe be the same brand of yarn, a little leftover ball in just this undyed white cream. Always comes in handy to have those around. There are 2 balls of this Bio Bimbo cotton yarn in the color 48. My guesstimate from looking this up was probably about $10 a ball new. It looks like this is discontinued, but there's 2 balls of that in here. Also, 2 balls of this Gedifra Scarlet. Another one I was guesstimating is about $8 a ball. When I say guesstimating, I mean that I couldn't find this brand new anymore. It's probably discontinued. So I'm just using the Ravelry or resale sites to guesstimate what you could assume you would pay for a ball like this nowadays. So 2 balls of that. I think that's all of the new in here. And then the rest of what's in here are these nearly full 100-gram balls of miscellaneous hand-dyed sock yarns. And there's so much of this. You could probably see there's all these different colors in here. Some multicolored options that are reminiscent of a spin cycle, though I've never worked with spin cycle. These are very reminiscent of that sort of style. Others are just multicolored. I don't know what these are. They didn't have a label. However, I have all of those in there that are sort of the closest to 100 grams. I think they were all weighing in around like 95 grams. So they might have been used for like a toe or a heel on a sock or something. And then I had all of these, which I've since put into a Ziploc bag. Smaller scraps of hand-dyed sock yarns in various colors. And I'm thinking we need to make a blanket at some point. I'm thinking that's where we have to go with this. So, of course, my first thought are the recent Laura Penrose patterns, her Sweet Shop blanket, and then the Stella quilt that's coming out soon. I'm thinking I'm just going to hang on to all these for now. And then when I feel like I have enough, we can really start to look at options. But what an absolute score. All of those things that I picked up for $7. I promise we're almost done. But now I can't remember if it was the same day, different thrift store. It was definitely a different thrift store, but it might have been a different day too. Popped into another Goodwill, and it was a different day. It was the day after I was driving by a Goodwill. I just dropped in and I saw this yarn. I have 6 balls of this. They were each $1, so I spent $6 total. And the information on the label is actually not at all in English, but what I was able to figure out, it looks like the brand is called Alina, and it's a mercerized cotton. They're each a 50-gram ball with 100 meters on each. So I'm thinking a summer tank. This color is stunning. So my color. I think this would look beautiful in a summery, simple tank top. So I think we'll get there in the summer, but it was a good thrift week for me. Which just brings me once again to my reminder, if you're someone who likes to thrift yarns or you've seen my videos where I talk about thrifting yarns, I've been to nearly 20 different thrift stores in the past week or two, and I had 2 finds. I had a big bag of yarn find and then each of those individual balls. And it's been months, I feel like, since I had another thrift find. I stop into every thrift store that I pass and I would go straight to where they would keep the yarn, see if they have any, and if I don't have any more time, that's all I do. So my number one tip when it comes to thrifting is just do it as much as you can. And when you find something that you love, you got to pick it up then. That's why for the knit along, it's always welcome to thrift yarn. So I'm really excited about those finds. Like I said, kind of thinking a summery tank for that plum mercerized cotton yarn. However, for the rest of it, no real plans other than I'm thinking a future and probably a more distant future blanket of sorts. But for those other smaller quantities, if you have any ideas, I'd love to know what you think I should do. It was a long one, wasn't it? So let me go ahead and wrap things up. The quick, brief plans for the week are I'd like to focus on getting the rest of the yoke on the Azucena pullover done so that I have something stockinette in the round that I could just knit on without paying attention to. Other than that, though, I really also want to hyper focus on my Stripeless Farnham tee to try and get that off the needles as soon as possible. I'd like that to be the next project off the needles. And Sand Cardigan is going to live in the background for as long as she has to in order to get done. But I'm just excited to cast on my actual spring knitting plans. So I want to get to those as soon as possible. And for those reasons, I'm focusing on the Azucena and the Farnham right now. All right, you guys. If you enjoyed this video and knitting content in general, I would so appreciate it if you would give this video a thumbs up. You can go ahead and subscribe. Don't forget to ring the bell so that when I post videos like that upcoming Folklore project vlog, you will be notified. And with all of that, big ol' thanks for watching. I will catch you on the next one. All right, you guys. Bye.